The release of Christopher Nolan's Tenet became a much needed ray of hope for every moviegoer in India. Cinema aficionados like me were left in dismay due to the closing of theatres during the peak of this pandemic. But Tenet was the film that brought back all of us into the magical world where you get to experience a new perspective on a 70mm screen. Anyways, while I was awestruck after encountering Nolan's never-ending fascination with the dynamics of time, there was a thought about the scenario of Hindi films that crossed my mind. And I'm sure that this is something which everyone thinks of at least once after watching a Hollywood film. Why can't we have such exhilarating international espionage, modern spy thrillers in India? But then I was like, wait a minute. I was instantly reminded of the fact that there is indeed a visionary filmmaker just like Christopher Nolan who has unflinchingly helmed the world of modern spy thrillers in India right from 2008. He's none other than Neeraj Pandey, whose creative endeavors have never failed to exhibit superior level of artistic finesse on the big screen. His method of transmitting the appropriate emotional impact to the audience remains unsurpassed. But what exactly is that method? What's his secret behind constructing those captivating narratives? In this video, let's explore the dynamic filmmaking of Neeraj Pandey. Let's try to figure out the possible reasons that compel the audience to avoid blinking their eyes throughout. Simply put, dynamic filmmaking is when you instill some amount of momentum in your shots by adding camera movement. This type of filmmaking is all about the choice of adding movement in your shots to convey the aesthetic energy of the narrative. When we look at the filmography of Neeraj Pandey, we can clearly sense this aesthetic energy being transmitted in almost every shot. This is something that becomes crucial, especially while telling stories that involve a sense of urgency and anticipation in the minds of the characters to achieve a particular goal. Neeraj Pandey has been cleverly utilizing this filmmaking technique right from the beginning of his career. His weapon of choice to add the flavor of dynamic filmmaking is the good old Steadicam. Let's try to understand the implementation of Steadicam and how it becomes the backbone of dynamic filmmaking for Neeraj Pandey. We will now analyze the film that marked his directorial debut and was remade in Tamil, Telugu and Sri Lankan English. If you still haven't watched A Wednesday, I request you to first watch it and then get back to watching this video. Prakash Rathore is about to get retired from the post of Commissioner of Mumbai Police. He has a great track record of solving tons of cases. But for him, there is one case which remains the most notable one. It all happened on a Wednesday when a stupid common man decided to initiate a pest control to clean his city. He devises a plan to eliminate 4 terrorists by blackmailing the Mumbai Police Department headed by Prakash Rathore. He feels that the government and the law is incapable of delivering justice to the citizens and putting an end to the national destruction of peace. So he decides to take the matter in his own hands and punish those animals in his own way. First, he plants 4 different bombs in the entire city, and then he blackmails Prakash Rathore and his team that if the police department rejects his demands and fail to follow his directions, he will detonate those bombs. In order to infuse the essence of dynamic filmmaking, you can choose to either keep the subject stationary and move the camera, or you can choose to move both the subject and the camera. Neeraj Pandey and his team does a phenomenal job in terms of balancing the inclusion of these two methods to generate the aesthetic energy of the narrative. Let's pick up individual plot points and try to understand how dynamic filmmaking helps to raise the excitement and keep the audiences hooked till the end. First, let's talk about the opening shot. It appears to be the time of sunrise. The camera tilts down to reveal the Queen's necklace of Mumbai. The camera remains stable to signify the calmness of this morning, accompanied with a soothing breeze at the shore. Then we notice a man running with a chair towards another man who is wearing a tracksuit and seems to be in his 60s. As soon as he grabs the chair and a towel to sit and relax for a bit, the camera slowly gains momentum towards the left side of the frame and starts moving towards him. Then we have a voiceover to reveal the exposition. The camera wants us to get closer to him and pay attention to what he is saying. This 60-year-old man is Prakash Rathore, who is going to retire tomorrow from the post of the Commissioner of Mumbai Police. The camera picks up its speed and starts revealing the side profile of the character. Then we have a cross dissolve to reveal the face of Prakash Rathore. The camera is now matching the speed of the previous shot and panning from left to right. The voiceover continues to introduce us with the mindset of the character, who will eventually turn out to be the protagonist. Most of the people will have a sense of relief after getting the news of their retirement, but Prakash Rathore is pondering about that one case which will remain unforgettable. A case with no official records, but it will stay alive in his head. The camera keeps panning with the same speed to signify the flow of his thoughts. Then there is another cross dissolve and we are back to that wide angle frame where we were stopped previously. The camera is now taking us away from the character and it starts zooming out to reveal how Prakash Rathore is gazing towards the skyline of Mumbai. This camera movement signifies that feeling of distress and terror which had once enveloped the entire city and Prakash Rathore some time ago on a Wednesday. We will realize this in the final act of the film, but this camera movement also tells us how Prakash Rathore retired from his duty only after saving the entire city from someone who had the guts to just walk into their lives and blow it apart. I agree that we don't see a lot of steadicam shots here in this scene, but this is a good example of dynamic filmmaking by keeping the character in the frame stationary and the camera in motion. The next shot is when we are introduced with the antagonist of this film. Neeraj Pandey and his team has incorporated 3 different cinematic techniques to introduce the character and give us a hint about his emotional motivation. The first technique is less about the camera and more about the usage of color. You will notice that in order to draw our attention and represent a particular trait, the outlook of the antagonist looks colorful, whereas the world around him has been represented in black and white. This has been done to signify how this character looks at the world, how he considers the world to be lifeless. A quick colorful montage about the daily life of Mumbai is also joined with this to show that for the audience watching this film, this world is perfect, but for the antagonist, this world is not a better place. Also, we notice that there is a lot of light in his aura, which gives us an idea that he might just be a savior. The second technique involves the usage of camera, but with minimal movement. This is when the antagonist enters a police station to file a report for his stolen wallet. We notice how the stable camera shots are hinting towards a normal, stable behavior of this character, hence deducting our previous suspicion. The final cinematic technique is based on dynamic filmmaking, which is used to initiate the aesthetic energy for the entire narrative. After leaving the black bag in that police station, the antagonist starts climbing the stairs of a building. He has a big poly bag filled with all the essentials to survive the entire day. Now this is probably the only static frame capturing the antagonist. After this, you will notice that the camera suddenly picks up the momentum. It keeps following the antagonist to reveal his final destination. The camera tilts from bottom to top, remains stationary for a moment, and then it quickly starts moving towards the antagonist. It stops at his feet with the entire city skyline in the background. With the same speed, the camera tilts to the top to signify the grandeur of his personality. How this entire city is just a small part of his big plan. His emotional motivation gets conveyed with the help of a dialogue.
हाँ जी, बोलिए।
सॉरी, मुझे अभी याद आया। आप गुस्सा तो नहीं हुए?
थोड़ा सा हुआ था, लेकिन पूरा शहर पड़ा है ना गुस्सा उतारने के लिए।
This continuous shot keeps following the antagonist while he begins to uncover his props and starts setting the stage to commence his plan. The anticipation starts building up with a series of quick zooms and pans. Our focus is drawn towards how he sets up all his equipment to reveal his strategic planning. Then he starts making his calls. First to the Commissioner of Police, Prakash Rathore, to blackmail him about the bomb blasts, and next to Naina Roy, a journalist who will be used as a pawn by the antagonist. Both these calls are captured with slow zooming in and a slow tilt down movement. This is the inciting incident, and the depth of the incitement is conveyed with the help of dynamic filmmaking. Since everyone else is introduced with this obstacle, the camera starts capturing the dreaded atmosphere and the sense of emergency that haunts Prakash Rathore and his team. This is when the second form of dynamic filmmaking lands us right in the middle of the conflict in the story. Both the characters and the camera start moving together to push the narrative and start overcoming the obstacle. It feels as if the camera has locked the audience with the characters. You are immediately attached with the emotional motivation of the characters, and the overall pacing of the narrative has been composed and communicated effectively to the audience. This is exactly what Neeraj Pandey likes to do with his films. His long continuous shots accomplished with a masterful usage of the Steadicam will bind the audience with the flow of the narrative. And in order to amplify the emotional impact, he likes to begin his plot right from an obstacle. It's like giving a cinematic refresher course so that the audience can fasten their seatbelts because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Plus, there are moments when these tracking shots can provide a unique execution of an activity in a scene. For example, in this scene, when Naina Roy asks Prakash Rathore to tell him everything before she starts helping him,
मैं आपकी कोई मदद नहीं कर सकती।
ओके, वन सेकंड।
ये बात सिर्फ तुम्हारे और मेरे बीच में रहनी चाहिए।
notice how the Steadicam will just zoom out and move away from these two characters, because this is exactly what the protagonist was asking for: privacy. I mean, the makers of the film could have just faded out the audio to hide this conversation, but this particular artistic choice adds a unique take on capturing this event. This is so simple but so brilliant. An amazing way to integrate dynamic filmmaking. Before we conclude this exploration, there is another reason why I mentioned Christopher Nolan in the beginning. Just like how Nolan likes to experiment with the different verticals and dimensions of time, Neeraj Pandey is someone who is fond of playing with the natural progression of time. All his stories have one common element that plays a crucial role in establishing the sense of urgency and make them absolutely thrilling: time. The pacing of his narratives is closely related with the passing of time. There are two ways in which he likes to represent different plot points and their relationship with time. He does this both for the characters and the audience. The first way is about everything that we have discussed so far. The Steadicam will attach the audience with the characters. We will continue to follow their actions and how they plan to overcome their obstacles. Everything feels fast-paced because time is running out. This part is more helpful towards increasing the excitement. But the second way helps in adding layers of anticipation. This is done by slowing down the shutter speed of the camera during those moments that involve a serious revelation, another major obstacle, and especially when we arrive at the midpoint, that is, the point of no return. Capturing with slow shutter speed awakens the attentiveness of the audience. This is when we notice a drastic slowdown of time, and this is how the cinema of Neeraj Pandey becomes epic in every sense. Let me know in the comments what are your thoughts about the cinema of Neeraj Pandey, and I will be back soon with another video. Till then, my name is Porush. Thank you so much for watching. Long live cinema. You can support this channel by hitting the red subscribe button and pressing the bell icon so that you don't miss